Hi everyone! Today, as promised with the last couple of videos, we are going to do a double team review. We pick our reviews based on things that we both read. So it might not always be good reviews, like we might both hate it, we might both like it, we might have differing opinions. We're gonna start on the positive.
Yeah.
Because we tend to do we've had a lot of negative reviews of everything already.
There's been some negativity.
So we thought we would try and have something that we both absolutely love and recommend. So we picked Raymond Carver's What We Talk About When We Talk About Love. This is my copy of the book, and as you can see, it is riddled with sticky notes and things. If you look inside, it's like everything is underlined and there's notes in all the margins. Like the back page is all text. I picked up this book because my high school boyfriend was quite a few years older than me and was in first year university while I was still in grade 11, and I was staying over at his house and I got really bored because I couldn't sleep one night, and I just kind of picked it up off the ground, and he'd said like, Carver's really good, you should read it, I think you'd like it, but I was kind of like, oh, I think it's about love. Ugh. And I'm like, short stories.
It's a misleading title.
Ugh, and like the little cover is kind of lame. You know, this is a teenager.
I love the cover.
Yeah.
I love it.
You're wrong though. A teenager? I was 16 years old.
As a teenager, I can understand why you might.
You know,
not
like
like
I wanted
the
to
cover.
read things like Foxfire. Like I wanted to read cool, edgy 90s things, not, you know, those 80s looking graphic design.
It does look like the 80s.
Anyway, I picked it up off his floor and I loved it. I read it and I cried, and it's so moving and beautiful, and I'd never experienced a writing style like him before. I'd read like The Hobbit and Anne of Green Gables, and I said 1984, and I'd only really read like these kind of like big writers that have big themes. And he's such a quiet writer.
He is.
With seemingly quiet, very human themes. And I just fell in love. And then I stole the book from that boyfriend. He kept asking for it back, and I kept being like, yeah, I'll give it back. And then I took the same university course as him and just kind of kept it. So it's filled with his notes from university, my notes from university, and actually you have a few bookmarks in this now.
I made a few notes.
And I have his other collections, but this one in particular is just so beautiful. And so every couple years I read it, and every time I find something else that I find amazing about it. So it's a book that's very near and dear.
My background with Carver is less interesting. It was right after I dropped out of university that I walked into a library, and I can't remember what led me to picking up Carver, but I've been reading him ever since. He's been one of my favorite writers.
I think that's a significant time to be introduced to
It was a very
Carver.
significant time for me,
and
absolutely.
a time when you're kind of flailing around.
It was a very vulnerable time.
Yeah. That's like the world of his books, is just these people flailing around trying to find connections.
All very vulnerable, yes, I agree.
So I think that was a perfect and most appropriate time.
It was, and I understand he wrote most of the stories at a very vulnerable time. What I understand was that he had just sobered up. He was an alcoholic for many years and had finally sobered up around the time he wrote most of the stories that are collected here. I think he had met his second wife, too, Tess Gallagher, to whom the collection is dedicated.
It's dedicated, yeah. Some believe that she's actually the one who pretty much wrote the stories, because he was too much of a drunk.
At that time, he was in a pretty bad state from what I've read.
So there's theories that she just kind of would take his notes, write the stories, and edit them, and then put them out under his name. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Some background on Tess Gallagher would be that she is herself a short story writer, and I think primarily a poet. I don't know if she wrote stories before she met Carver. I think that came after. The Lover of Horses is her first collection, and I think that wasn't published until the late 80s or early 90s, which was around the time Carver died, actually.
Other than saying that everyone has to read that, I understand that that's a review, but we want to do a little more in-depth reviews, because I find talking about things like writing style and themes, character, how they tell the story, the tone of the book, things like that are are much more interesting than just this happens and it's good. The thing that blew my mind about Carver, and continues to, is that he's a stark writer.
He is.
He has little bits of description. They're in this very first story. I can read kind of a line. In the kitchen, he poured another drink and looked at the bedroom suite in his front yard. The mattress was stripped, and the candy-striped sheets lay beside 2 pillows on the chiffonier. Except for that, things looked much the way they had in the bedroom. Nightstand and reading lamp on the side of his bed, nightstand and reading lamp on her side. It is not often in his writing you get the description that he had candy-striped sheets.
Yeah.
That's a very unusual thing for Carver, but that's kind of the beauty of his work, is that it's the mundane detail of the bedroom suite on the lawn in this very unmundane setting, you know, and that's why he gives that mundane
where he does include detail. It's always relevant. It's always to some effect. A lot of critics have called him minimalist or minimalistic, but Carver himself rejected that. I would sooner say that he was a precise, or like Zoe said, a stark writer, because he is very precise in his description and his stories are very to the point. It's
something that's quite the opposite of literature today.
Yes.
There's a lot of current writers. I will say it, Murakami is one of them. And I feel like they could learn a little bit from Carver. I understand that people want to be taken into a world, but Raymond Carver has very much his own world. Robert Altman actually made a film about his world.
Incredible.
That's how much of a world he has.
That's shortcuts.
That a filmmaker took his short stories, linked them together, and it has a tone, and it feels so Raymond Carver.
It does.
So I don't buy this idea that you need to describe every little piece of everything in order to bring people into the world. I mean, the Lord of the Rings stories have the same. It's a problem for me.
It's excessive.
Yeah, some of the older writers, but a lot of new writers are picking it up now, and I don't think it's necessary.
I've read some criticism of current writing and what has been labeled hyperspecificity.
Yes, that's
the term, because it is so excessively descriptive and detailed, and in seemingly unnecessary ways, whether or not you'd want to justify that as being the commentary these writers are making, that it is all mundane to the point of excess.
But I mean, there's nothing more mundane than the world in a lot of Raymond Carver stories.
Absolutely.
It's so fascinating because he simultaneously depicts lower class people and higher class people, and they're all part of the same world.
They are.
And it's really wonderful in that way, that the language is never low, but it's never too high either.
No.
Despite the fact that they're all stories of isolation, he never alienates you as a reader. He never makes you feel like you're being talked down to.
No.
Or that you're like a voyeur in the life of a poor person. He never does that. You always feel like you're in this Carver world.
It's worth mentioning that Carver never wrote a novel. He stuck to short stories
and poetry.
Short stories, poetry, and some essays.
I've never read the essays.
I've never read the essays either.
And something I want to say on that note is I've read all his other short story collections.
Oh yeah.
Just start with that.
Oh yes. Carver's philosophy to writing was that there should be a little autobiography and a lot of imagination. And a good example of this is the story A Serious Talk. The story grew from something that was said to Carver, probably by his first wife, and that's the last Christmas you'll ever ruin for us. This during his years of alcoholism. If you read the story, it makes sense. It's very bleak.
Yeah, it's very good.
It's very well written.
I can't say that any of none of them are happy.
It's a downbeat collection. And
Downbeat.
That's true of all his fiction.
Yeah, downbeat is putting it lightly.
It might be some of these stories are devastating.
Yeah, but for me, I love it because it makes me feel something.
Yes.
So if you like to feel emotions, for me, it's like I hate when things are trying to make me feel. I hate it. I can't stand it. Like, is other films that people are like, well, how can you not cry? I'm like, because they want me to.
It's
they
overly
know,
sentimental in many cases.
And he is the least sentimental writer in the world. It's not, but he is very, very unsentimental, and holds no preciousness to his characters.
And he holds no punches.
Yes, none at all. He almost like just kind of keeps at you the way that kind of life keeps at you.
Oh,
like
yes.
when you think that like, oh, this can't get any darker, it just does. Don't read it if you want a happy time. Why do books have to be happy? I hate that.
Yes.
And I love when something can make me feel.
Whatever it is you're feeling.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the power of literature, and if you don't like that, then I feel like you're cutting yourself off from emotion that's quite positive.
Absolutely, you're limiting yourself.
Yeah, so I feel like we've summed up our thoughts. I don't know how well we've done, but I have so much feelings, like so many feelings about this book.
All the feelings
About this book, that it actually becomes quite hard for me to sum up what I love about it, because as much as he's not a sentimental writer, I have a lot of sentimental feelings about this book.
We both do.
So I just noticed it wasn't getting a lot of play on BookTube, so I wanted to give it some play.
And put it out there.
And recommend it highly.
Absolutely.
Especially if you want to see a different style of writing that is quite unique.
Especially now, in this time of hyperspecificity.
Yes. So go read it. It's a 5-star book.
Absolutely, our strongest recommendation.
Yes. And we will see you guys again.
Yes, see you next time.